right. Hello, everyone. If you can't tell by my name everywhere, my name is Jahr. I am co-founder and instructor over at Vue Mastery. And this morning, I want to invite you all on an adventure. Who wants to go on an adventure today? OK, awesome, most of you. So we're going off deep into space because our destination today is the planet of Vuetopia. Somewhat like a utopia, but not quite. So as we arrive on the surface of the planet, we are there to explore and discover some secret knowledge. So as we navigate around the planet, we see these sacred, secret-looking, upside-down pyramid symbols. So we think we're on the right track. And as we continue exploring, we see the temple, which we hear contains hidden knowledge for us. And as we approach, we are greeted with this barrier. Turns out we need to have some sort of access granted to receive this secret information. So if you haven't yet caught on, this is an elaborate analogy for my talk, which is about token-based authentication. And in this case, we're doing it from scratch. So what is authentication? I'm sure most of you are aware. There are often parts of your application where you don't want just everyone off the internet to be able to access them. So in that case, we want to be able to block those routes and have only authenticated, logged-in users access those parts of our application. So that is authentication, and of course there are different providers and protocols when we're talking about authentication, such as Auth0, Firebase is another popular one, or you might be using OAuth, where your users are logging in with Google or Facebook or GitHub, something like that. But today this is from scratch, so we're going to look at creating our own solution using JWT with local storage. And we're going to focus solely on the Vue side. We're at Vue Amsterdam, not Node Amsterdam or Python Amsterdam. So I'm going to kind of lightly touch on what considerations to take on the server side, but we're really going to focus on the Vue portion. So if you're unfamiliar with JWT, it is an acronym standing for JSON Web Tokens. And you can think of this token much like a key that unlocks those blocked, protected parts of your application. And a JWT consists of three parts. First, it is the header, which tells you what type the token is. In this case, it's going to be JWT, and then includes the hashing algorithm being used. And then secondly is the payload. So this contains the info that we're transmitting, information such as the issuer of the token, if it has an expiration, if the recipient of that token has admin privileges, things like that go in the payload. And then finally, we get to the signature, which is a hash of the header plus the payload plus the secret. So all of that together, you've got that token, you've got that key that you can use to unlock those parts of the application. So by the end of the talk, we're going to implement a token-based authentication solution, which essentially behaves like this. So our user is going to log in, and when they hit that login button, we're going to send a request over to the server, which verifies that we have an account, that we have the proper credentials to be accessing the app and the protected regions therein. And we're gonna, the server is going to respond back with a response including that token. We're going to take that token and look at putting it in our Vuex state, making a copy of it, and putting it into our local storage. And then finally, we're going to also need to put that token, put that key into our Axios header so that when we make API calls out to the server can essentially receive that token, verify that we indeed have the credentials, and then send us back that private information. And of course, we don't want to keep users logged in forever, so we're going to implement a Logout solution, which effectively clears out all of that user data. Cool. So by the end of the talk, this is what we'll be implementing, and we're doing so with a very simple example application, which has three main components or routes. We've got one to register our users, one to log them in, and then we've got that dashboard, which, again, when it's created, we're going to make an API call with Axios for that private information, but if you're not logged in, that's, of course, blocked. Cool. So let's get started. And we'll start with a register step. And to really get started, we need to understand the client-server communication here. So we have a user logging in. As soon as they hit that register button, we're going to make a call out to our register endpoint, sending along that form data, so all that user data. Then over on the server side, we have a few steps. So first, we're going to check if the user already exists in our database. If not, we're good to go. We can proceed to the second step, which is adding that user to our database. And that's about it in terms of the essential steps for the registration. There's, of course, a number of other steps you might want to implement. And also, how many of you have, using a web application, you've tried to register and given all of your information, and then once you've registered, they then redirect you to a login page, and you have to re-enter all of that information? How many of you love that user experience? Me too. So we're going to actually add on some login steps to the register so that it's one quick process in terms of user experience. We register and then we log them in as well. So in order to do that on the server, we're going to create the JWT token and then send a response back, which includes that token. Then we can head back over to the client side. And then we've got several steps here. So we're going to store our user data in our Vuex state, store a copy of that in local storage. We're going to add the token to our Axios header, and then, of course, redirect to our dashboard. So let's look at the code for implementing this. So here in our store file, our Vuex store, we're going to add that register action. And it is going to make a commit mutation. So I'll pass in commit, as well as credentials. That's that form data, the user information. And then we're going to go ahead and return Axios. You'll see why in just a moment. We're going to make a post request out to our register endpoint, passing along the user credentials. And then when our server responds, we're going to take that response, take that data, and commit a mutation we're about to write called set user data, and then pass in the data that we got back from the server. Cool. So now we can head up and create our set user data mutation. That needs to take in the state as well as the user data that we got from the server. And we need to set the Vuex state of our user data to the data we passed in. And then, like I mentioned, we need to store a copy in local storage. So we'll set the item by the name of user. And we need to JSON stringify it because it's an object and local storage receives strings. And then finally, we need to add that token to the Axios header. So we'll say axios.defaults.headers.common, then authorization, and then set it to type bearer, and then use some string interpolation to add that token in. Cool. Now, we need to actually dispatch this action. We're going to dispatch it from the component that contains our register form. So we'll head over to the register user component. And as you see at the top here, when it's submitted, we're calling the register method. So we'll write that out now. And again, we're going to dispatch our action by the name of register. And it needs those credentials, which in this case is the form data here. So it's going to be, so the name is going to be this.name from our form. Email is going to be this.email. And then password, this.password. Cool. And then when we get the response successfully from the server, we're going to redirect our user to the dashboard using Vue Router. All right, so what happens in terms of that dashboard? Kind of looked at it earlier. So when it's created, it's going to make an API call, sending along that token. We unlock effectively that private data, and the user sends it back, and voila, we've registered and tacked down those login steps in so doing. All right, so heading into the dashboard component, we'll add that created lifecycle hook. So we're going to make a GET request to the dashboard endpoint. And then when we get that response, we'll just take that response, take that data, and then set it equal to our components data so that we can then render it and display it in the template. So checking this all out in the browser, our user creates their account. And we've logged them in, and here it is at the dashboard. And I've got some fun animal-themed events, because who doesn't want to go to a puppy parade? I know I would love to go to one of those. So far we've looked at the register component along with the dashboard. So let's look specifically at the login component. Again, to review, we kind of already did this in the register, but we need to do it separately as well. We need to verify that the user exists in our database. If we're good to go on that front, we'll then create that JWT token and then send it along with the response back to the client. Then on the client, it's really the same steps we looked at, where we're storing the data in Vuex state, storing the copy in local storage, adding it to Axios, and redirecting to dashboard. So we'll head back into the store. And the login action is going to be very, very similar to the register action. So similar, I'm just going to copy this and paste it here, changing the endpoint to the login endpoint. Great. Of course, we need to dispatch the login action from the login user component, which contains that form. When the form is submitted, we're running this method, which is, as you might imagine, can be very similar to the register method we wrote within our register component. So I will paste that in, change the action name that we're dispatching to login. We don't need the name here in terms of our form data. And we are still redirecting to the dashboard. So checking this out in the browser, our user logs in with their email and password, and voila, they've been authenticated and redirected into that private dashboard. But like I said, we don't want to keep our users logged in forever and ever, so we need to implement some user logout functionality so that we can clear the state, clear the local storage, and clear out the Axios header as well. Cool. So back in our Vuex store, we're going to add our logout action, which is going to commit a mutation. So we'll pass that in. we're going to now clear the user data. So now we'll write that, which is a reversal of our set user data step. So we'll copy this and paste that so we can then reverse that. We need to set the state, our user state, to effectively null. We no longer need to pass that in either. We're going to remove the user from our local storage. And then clear out that Axios header as well. So this works. This is effectively the line-by-line necessary steps to log the user out. However, there is a more succinct and more scalable solution, so let's look at that right now. So instead of manually clearing the state and manually clearing the Axios header, we can instead do a reload, a location.reload. And as you see in this tip here, this reloads the current page. So the Vuex state and that Axios header information is not going to survive that browser refresh. So this is a nice way to clear out that data. You might have, as your application grows, a lot of Vuex modules, and it can get a little complicated about where you're logging out from. So this is a very scalable solution to achieve that. All right, so checking all this out in the browser, we're going to hit that logout button. That's going to clear out everything, and you should probably be returning from your server a 401 because your user doesn't have permission. So, great. But because they don't have permission, we probably shouldn't still allow them to be accessing this route because they're not going to be receiving that information anyways. So there are some additional authentication steps to consider to really build out a solid solution. So one of those steps is to implement a route guard for pages that require auth, such as this dashboard, so the user can't even get to that page if they're not logged in. We also want to be catching and displaying errors. The user might be trying to register with an email that already exists or logging in with the wrong password. We want to catch and display those accordingly. And then there might be situations where you want to keep your user logged in, let's say for 72 hours or something like that, so we can add a feature for automatic login. I don't, unfortunately, have time to go through all of those in detail, but I do look at how those are implemented in my full token-based authentication course over on Vue Mastery. Shameless promotion here. If you're unfamiliar with kind of how Vue Mastery works and what that looks like, we have effectively a whole learning path that explores different topics in the Vue ecosystem. So we release a new lesson every week, and we've got several instructors working on different courses, so our subscribers get fresh new content every week on those different topics, and it helps Vue developers stay sharp with their skills and relevant with the technologies. Since you're here, I imagine that you are a fan of Vue Conferences, so I invite you to check out on vuemastery.com our conference page. We've got a bunch of different conferences from all over the world with expert Vue talks. All of those are free for you to consume, so I invite you to check those out. And then we still, over at the booth, have stickers. Unfortunately, we ran out of the paper cheat sheets, but on vuemastery.com, we do have PDF downloads of the composition API cheat sheet, of the Nuxt.js cheat sheet, and then essentially an intro to Vue cheat sheet as well. So you can download all of those. And Greg let you know this yesterday, but I wanted to remind you, if you are considering becoming a subscriber and supporting the Vue project in the process, you can use the code AMS2020 for a 30% discount on an annual subscription. And then if you are on a team or lead a team, we do offer team subscriptions, which are discounted. So you can talk to us at the booth or send us an email from our website. We'd be happy to set you up with one of those. All right, so that is my time. I thank you so much, and have a good rest of your conference. See you.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was fantastic, as always.